The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. It's not that often that on the show we have historical figures, but this one is going to be a doozy. Jake Angeli is out of the gulag. There's a lot of misinformation about you out there. The most common name for you, and I purposely did as little homework as possible because there's so much misinformation about you in the media. I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. The most common nickname people have for you is the QAnon shaman. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. The first question I want to ask you is, how does it feel knowing that kids are going to see your picture in their textbooks like in another 20, 30, 40 years, because you have become, for better or worse, the visual symbol of January 6th?
Well, I'd like to hope and think and believe that I've more so become a visual symbol for freedom.
Yeah.
That's what the message I've gotten for a lot of people, that it's like an icon for freedom. There's people all over the world that have, in other countries that have dressed up the way that I was dressed. One guy was in Italy, another guy was in Brazil, another guy was in Russia. There's a lot of people here in the United States that have dressed up that way. There's people that have dressed up as me for Halloween. So, it's flattering. I'm trying to stay humble about it though.
Where did you get that headdress? Is it real buffalo head?
Oh, well, it's coyote skin
Okay.
and coyote tails. The horns, as far as I know, are not authentic.
Oh, these are right here on my chair.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, that's an awesome chair.
Yeah.
I got it over 10 years ago. I believe I got it on eBay. And I've been wearing it for over 10 years. So the way that people saw me dressed on January 6th is the way that I've been dressing for over 10 years. It was not anything that I wasn't already doing. A lot of people thought I just did it for that day, and that's nothing could be further from the truth.
So let's break down that nickname that the media gave you. Are you or have you ever been affiliated in any way with QAnon?
Well, first of all, QAnon is a fiction that was created by the Operation Mockingbird media. There's Q, and then there's the QAnons. Then there's the Anons. And then so the media created QAnon because they combined Q and then the Anons, the community of people that followed Q. And the reason why they did this is because as they reported on QAnon, they created a bunch of stories in the media and in search engines, essentially, that when people began to look up QAnon, all they would find is the media's false narrative regarding the Anons and Q. If instead they were talking about Q over and over and over again, asking who is Q, what is Q, etc., then people would then start following the Q drops, which the media does not want them to do. So what they did is what we're witnessing here is one psyop versus another. Yeah. And you have the Operation Mockingbird media psyop that is based on division. It's based on subversion. It's based on control and things like MK Ultra mind control. And then on the other side, what you have is the Q psyop, which it is a psychological operation. But the Q psyop is more so based on deprogramming or reprogramming people. It's based on getting the truth out to people about the fiat debt-based currency, child and human trafficking, corruption, blackmail, and stuff like that in the government. And so the counter psyop that is in charge of Operation Mockingbird, which would be CIA, and the other intelligence agencies that run these child trafficking industries that are corrupting our government through things like Jeffrey Epstein and blackmail. These individuals infiltrated the Anon groups online, and then they started spewing disinformation, things like JFK Jr. is alive and going to be Donald Trump's president, the earth is flat, that kind of stuff. And then once that disinformation campaign had run its course, then the media started reporting on QAnon and saying they believe the earth is flat, they believe JFK Jr. is still alive, and they didn't touch all this stuff about blackmail, fiat currency, and child and human trafficking. You see? So this is how this kind of stuff works. So QAnon is a fiction.
I had this great tweet from a fan yesterday that I would love your response to, because I was like, you nailed it on the head. The guy said, and he does use the term QAnon, but I'm quoting him. He goes, "It's telling how out of all the BS nonsense that QAnon believed in, the media honed in on the one thing they were basically right about: international pedophile rings serving global elite as their big example of what a supposedly absurd belief to discredit them with." And it's kind of fascinating. You speak about the Mockingbird media, how blue pilled people can tell you with a straight face that Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, that he was arrested, that the things he did are horrible. And yet, if you believe in an international pedophile ring for the elites, you're a crazy person. And they will have these two beliefs in their head simultaneously. And if you say, well, that's a contradiction, no, you're crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, it's called cognitive dissonance. They have a
Yes.
cognitive dissonance at the fact that there is a large international corrupting child trafficking ring that international entities like, say, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, even things like NATO, the UN, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, these entities use these child trafficking rings to blackmail people into submission, and then they place them at high levels of power so that they will do as they're told, not do what's best for people.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other part of the nickname. Have you ever identified as being a shaman of some sort?
Well, I practice shamanism, but one of the funny things is that I never, ever, ever called myself the QAnon shaman, but the media said that I gave myself that name, that I called myself the QAnon shaman. That never happened.
Can you tell me what practicing shamanry means?
Well, look at it like this. Shamanism is the oldest religion in the world because it is the first religion. And all shamanic cultures practice ceremonial use of things like sacred plants or things in the ecosystem. So all shamans are connected to nature. All shamanic cultures believe in a unifying spiritual deity or a unified field of energy. All shamanic cultures believe in the use of things like song, dance, drumming, and singing. They all practice some form of healing, and they all believe in the spirit world, and they all have certain sacraments or things in nature that they believe are sacred. All shamans also, the good ones that are out there that aren't charlatans or people seeking power, they chase off evil spirits, they ward off evil spirits, and they prevent negative timelines from manifesting for the culture. So they make sure that crops are good, they call the rain, they make sure that the people are healthy, etc. So
So does that
that's what I practice, is all of those things. And that's why I say it's the first religion, it's the oldest religion, because all religions, one way or another, are practicing an ancient form of shamanism because they all believe in all of these things.
does that mean? Should I take it to mean that you're an Elizabeth Warren supporter?
No.
Well, when she dances, she makes it rain.
Oh, well, I don't know about all that.
Let's. So, how about another question? Should I take it, reading between the lines, that you've met the elves?
The DMT elves?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
What can you explain to people what your first experience was like breaking the veil and meeting the elves?
Well, the first time that I ever met them, it was kind of a compounding experience. I shot up a tower, a spinning tower of like multicolored uh, uh, fractal-like patterns, and I shot up out of this tower. And at the top of the tower was like a Vitruvian man, with the hands
Yep.
out. Only I was that Vitruvian man, and I like shot out of the crown of the Vitruvian man and into the ether, and then I saw like galaxies, I saw stars, I saw the very fabric of reality itself. And then as I moved into these higher dimensions and planes of consciousness, I ended up interacting with and meeting all of these different entities that existed and lived in that realm. And it was almost like an interdimensional handshake of all of the entities that lived in the DMT space. It was really quite cool. And then as I started to come down, it was like I was coming down through this like the machinery that makes the universe run and move and tick. And it was all based on sacred geometry and stuff. And I was coming down this fractal sacred geometric machine and then back into my body. And then boom, I was back in my body.
Did they have some kind of message for you?
Not the first time. The first time it was more so just like, hey, nice to meet you. Glad you're
Yeah.
here.
What about other times? I mean, have a lot of people, when they break the veil, they come back with some kind of message or revelation?
You know, I've never really gotten any sort of like message or revelation from them as any more than, you know, reality is not what you think it is. If anything, the message was everything is based on energy, frequency, and vibration. And if you change the frequency, then you change the reality. Like changing radio dials, you know, changing the dial on a radio. You go to a different radio station, all of a sudden, all of this is gone and you're somewhere else. Your consciousness is somewhere else, not your physical body, but your consciousness is able to travel the etheric realms.
What is your view about the fact that psychedelics are kind of getting corporate sponsorship and are becoming more mainstream? Do you think this is a good thing, a bad thing, a mix?
I think it's a mix because the pharmaceutical companies are really trying their darndest to create some sort of a synthetic that will allow them to profit from all of this. They've really been pushing for things like ketamine therapy, which I do not advocate for at all. And it's because it makes them money. Psilocybin, mushrooms, magic mushrooms, peyote, ayahuasca, even cannabis have been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years by shaman, by sages and saints to transcend physical reality and immerse themselves in the ether, as well as helping people to heal. So I'm glad to see that there's some sort of traction being gained in the public dialogue regarding these issues. However, I don't think that corporate sponsorship or pharmaceutical intervention is advantageous at all.
Why do you think there's such a kind of background noise in our culture that if you experiment or people who use psychedelics to heal? I personally know several people who had depression or PTSD, and they tried just once a trip on shrooms, and they came back, their brains kind of reset, and they didn't become addicts. They didn't start beating their wives. They didn't start wrecking cars. They did this one experiment in safe situations with their friends. It helped them heal. And yet, if you talk about this in many rooms, there's a perception that you're a crazy person. Why do you think that perception exists?
Well, the perception exists because there has been a very real and intense disinformation campaign pushed by government agencies and the Mockingbird media. The fact of the matter is, in particular, like for example, with psilocybin, what this stuff does is it actually connects like all the neurons in your brain. And as it does so, you dissolve the illusion of separation. It has been clinically proven that when you are quote unquote hallucinating, it's not that you're seeing something that isn't there. It's that you're seeing stuff that is there all the time, but you don't normally perceive with your five senses. And this is because of this heightened level of neural connectivity in the brain. Normally, the brain filters all of this information out. But under the influence of psilocybin, this information is allowed to come in. So you're actually perceiving reality more in its actuality, more in its objectivity as what it actually is than when you're sober. So because the brain is based on the formulation of neurological patterns, and those neurological patterns can a lot of the time be linked to things like depression or anxiety, and they end up reinforcing themselves over and over and over again the longer the pattern stays in place. Then when the psilocybin comes in there and then changes all that up by connecting all the brain's neurons in the brain, then once you quote unquote come down, then you have a new neurological pattern. You can't see reality the same way. And another aspect to it is this: the neurological patterns that are in our subconscious mind and therefore affect our conscious perception of reality. A lot of the time, especially when it comes to things like anxiety or depression, they are connected to negative experiences, traumatic experiences.
Yes.
And so these intense experiences of boundary disillusion that come with psychedelic or hallucinogenic experiences, they are equally intense to these intense experiences. And they almost act like a positive reinforcement to the getting rid of these experiences and showing people that life can be good again and they can start anew.
Yeah, the thing with depression is it's extremely insidious, and it is almost like demonic possession because the depression knows what to tell you to keep you in that state. And the vast majority of people who've struggled with depression, which is I would, and I'm sure most people who are depressed would much rather deal with like a broken leg or having to be in a wheelchair than being depressed because all right, it sucks I'm in a wheelchair. You can have an extremely fruitful life if you have some kind of physical disability. It's not even a question. But when it's your brain 24/7 telling you, that things are bad and they're always going to stay bad, there's nowhere else for you to go. And it knows exactly what to say. And the thing that's tricky, if depression has been your norm your entire life, you are of the belief it's never going to get better. Like you can't even imagine being not depressed. So it just kind of, like you said, it feeds on itself. And it's just really a horrific situation to be in. Guys, your business was humming, but now you're falling behind. Teams are buried in manual work. It's taking forever to close the books. Getting one source of truth is like pulling teeth. If this is you, you should know these three numbers: 36,000, 25, 1. 36,000 is the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the number one cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need in one place. NetSuite has the power to have everything together so you can make better decisions, and they're offering an offer that is unprecedented to make that possible. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist. It's designed to give you consistently excellent performance for free. Just go to netsuite.com/welcome. That's netsuite.com/welcome to get your own KPI checklist for free. netsuite.com/welcome. Guys, this summer you could spend thousands of dollars on planes, hotels, tourist traps, or you can spend less money on a beautiful garden that'll give you years of pleasure with fastgrowingtrees.com. They've got thousands of easy-to-grow plants, shrubs, and tree varieties. They're expertly curated for your unique climate and needs. They've got Meyer lemons, they've got evergreens, they've got shade trees, and everything in between. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to haul heavy plants around. With fastgrowingtrees.com, you order online. They arrive at your door in just a few days. I did it myself. It was really easy. No green thumb, no problem. FastGrowingTrees.com's plant experts are just a Zoom chat or phone call away. They're always available, eager to help. They can walk you through your entire garden to help solve problems you're having with plants and trees. Plus, Fast Growing Trees plant experts have specialized degrees and training to help you troubleshoot from root to leaf. It's like telehealth for your plants. I love fastgrowingtrees.com because it's easy to use. They've got a big variety and the prices can't be beat. And with their Fast Growing Trees 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, everything will look great fresh out of the box. Join almost 2 million happy Fast Growing Trees customers. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome now to get 15% off your order. That's 15% off. All you have to do is go to fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome. They've got some really cool stuff there. Please check them out. Let's get back to the show. Let's shift tacks a little bit. So you're out of jail. Can you tell us what your legal status is? Are you under house arrest? Are you a free man? Are there more charges pending? What is your status right now in eyes of the law?
Well, thank goodness there's no more charges pending.
Good.
I am a quote unquote free man in the sense that I'm no longer in prison. I'm not on house arrest. I'm not in a halfway house. I wouldn't be able to talk to you if I was on house arrest or in a halfway house. I am currently on what is called supervised release. A lot of people like to call it probation, but that's
Okay.
actually not what it is. It's supervised release.
What's the difference between the two?
Well, what it is it's just a it's a misconception of what supervised release is. They just put a different label on it. They're calling it probation because you have a probation officer, which
Okay.
I do. There are conditions to that.
Okay.
I have to call like a urinalysis, like corporate hotline or whatever every day. So in case I have to go down and pee in a cup, so that my probation officer knows that I'm not using drugs. I also am not allowed to leave the state as of right now. That could change in the future. My probation officer said that, I basically have to develop a rapport and show that I'm going to do everything I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to do it well, and that I'm not going to be a problem. And then, the idea of possibly leaving the state would be open for discussion. And obviously I'm not allowed to hang out with other felons, which I wouldn't anyway. I don't really have
Sure.
any friends that are felons. But that's pretty much it. I also have to, report my income and stuff like that every month. I have to have a job, which I do. So there's all of that, but it's far less restrictive than being in prison.
Yeah, of course. Um, let me give you a softball question, because obviously there's so much misinformation about you in the media. Were you on January 6th attempting to overthrow the government?
No.
Can you expound on what I mean, I've several friends who've had stories written about them in the media, and they're sitting at home and they're like, not only is this completely removed from reality, it's that if you bothered to call me for 3 seconds, I could have dispelled this, but you'd much rather tell the story than just talk to me for literally a few seconds. Can you tell, like, what was the story from your perspective?
Absolutely. So let's start with the notion that the Mockingbird media said that I was a failed actor. They also said that I called myself the QAnon shaman. They also said that I was schizophrenic, bipolar, depressed, and delusional. None of that is true. None of that was in my psychological evaluation that was court ordered.
Wait a minute, hold on, I
And
gotta
in
interrupt you.
fact,
So they literally just completely pulled this out of nowhere?
well, as far as I know, they spoke with my previous attorney, and that's where they got this crazy information from.
Okay.
He has since denied that that's the case, but there's some things that were reported in some of these articles that only could have come from one place.
Okay.
And what's interesting, though, is that in my psychological evaluation, it said the antithesis of these things. It said that I was not being diagnosed schizophrenic. It said that I was not delusional. So why it is that those things were said, I am still scratching my head about. There's other things too. The media used my image to create a shock and awe campaign and a straw man that they called the QAnon shaman.
Yeah.
And in the process, they also, while using my image on a screen, they use terms like white supremacy, they use terms like racism, they use terms like terrorism, they use terms like insurrection and stuff like that. And so there's a lot in the media that is entirely false. Most of it is entirely false. The only things that were probably true were some of the things like how many months I got in prison, and that's pretty much it. So this is what they do. This is how you create misinformation campaigns. Is you take true information and then you couple it with false information or disinformation, and you bring them together to create
Yep.
a misinformation narrative that they control.
I make this point many times, because I always say the corporate press is factual and not truthful. And the very example I could give is, let's suppose I bought a store and I want to turn into condos. The headline would factually but not truthfully say, Michael refuses to sell food to hungry children. Or they could even say, Michael refused to sell food to hungry Black children, to make me out to be a racist just because I'm closing down a grocery store. So all it takes is they don't lie all the time, just complete lies. They will take some truth, there's your picture, and have on the screen white supremacy, and I'm at home, I'm going to make the connection. This guy on my screen has something to do with white supremacy. Why else would the two things be on the screen together, right? It's just logic. And they let the viewer make that connection.
Well, it's called neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
And what it's about is combining trigger words with trigger images. And then when you combine these two together, you get an emotional response in the subconscious mind. And a lot of it is based on the use of cognitive labels, labels that trigger these emotional responses. And then the media uses these emotional responses to target individuals or target other groups of people.
So let's talk. So let us talk about it from your perspective. What really happened? Why were you there at the Capitol on January 6th if it wasn't to, as they claimed, to overthrow the government?
Well, let's start with this. If you want to see what a violent overthrow of the government or an insurrection looks like, just look at what happened in Afghanistan recently. Right. That right there is an insurrection. I went to the January 6th MAGA Million March, the protest of the election, for a number of reasons. To start, it wasn't just about the election. It was about a number of things for me, and I think for a lot of other people as well. For me, it was about knowing that JFK was not killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, but was shot by more than one bullet from more than one angle. And the government and the media had been lying to us for decades about that. And Donald Trump released the autopsy, and lo and behold, the autopsy says he was shot by more than one bullet from more than one angle. Isn't that where the term conspiracy theory came from? And conspiracy theorist was people that didn't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole lone shooter of JFK?
Well,
that is where that term came from.
I'm a JFK truther. I don't think there were any gunmen. I think his head just did that.
Yeah, so that's number one. So there is a long string of lies in the media and the government. And because of Operation Mockingbird, it's quite clear that the government and the media have been working together for a long time to control the narrative. I think it was actually a CIA the head of the CIA that once said, once everything that every American citizen believes is false, we will have done our job. Or we will know our job is complete.
I want everyone listening to this to assume that both Jake and I are crazy and that we're liars, and go look up Operation Mockingbird for yourself. Look up what the CIA admitted themselves. Look on the Wikipedia. Assume we're crazy people. Assume we don't know what we're talking about. Assume we're paid for by Putin or Zelensky or whoever. That's fine. Go look yourself. You don't have to trust anything that anyone is saying on your screens, and then you can come back and see if the word conspiracy theory applies. Go ahead.
So that right there was number one for me. And then there's all this other stuff throughout our history up until the day of January 6th. Things like Waco, things like the Oklahoma City bombing.
Have you been to Waco, by the way? Have you been to the church is still there? Have you ever been there?
No, I have not. But that was a perfect example that the American government could literally burn men, women, and children alive and brush it under the rug.
Yeah.
There's things like that. There's also things like Operation Fast and Furious. There's things like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There's things like Benghazi, the 33,000 emails. There's things like Operation Northwoods. That's kind of back during JFK's time, but that right there is evidence that false flags are something that the government's doing a long time. The Gulf of Tonkin and getting us in the Vietnam War. There's all these things. And then there's also, Russia for 4 years. And then that turns out to be a lie. Once again, the media and the government working together, the weaponization of federal agencies, FISA warrants and stuff like that, all the while they knew it was a lie. Then there is COVID and the lockdowns and the fact that everybody in one way or another was on some form of federal house arrest because they were told that they were not essential and that they had to stay home. People lost their homes. People lost their jobs. Children were starving. And then to top it all off, they created the COVID Relief Act, where they gave literally billions of dollars away to special interest groups in foreign nations, but they only gave every American citizen a $600 check after being locked up for almost a year. And there's also the BLM and Antifa riots that were mostly peaceful, according to the Mockingbird media. And then there was, to top it all off, the rigged election in 2020. So when you see this long string of abuses and this long pattern of corruption and all the evidence that goes with it, it's you have to ask yourself, where are we going to be 7 generations from now if we don't say something, if we don't stand up and say enough is enough, you guys are lying? And what's wrong, in my opinion, what's wrong with questioning proven liars?
Yeah. Oh no, I completely agree with you. So things, I think would you say it's fair to say that things quickly spun out of control and you were kind of
Oh
at the epicenter
yeah,
of that? Yeah.
yeah. What really did it, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, was when the police actually threw concussion grenades and tear gas into what was
Yeah.
otherwise a mostly peaceful crowd. There was a couple of people at the barricades that were causing problems, but they hadn't breached the barricades. It was when all that stuff happened, when they threw the tear gas and the concussion grenades into the crowd, that's when things got really crazy and really fast, got really crazy really fast.
So when I was doing my book, The New Right, I was going to go to Charlottesville because I thought this is going to be some minor, brouhaha, and then I could write about it, be a good closing chapter of my book. And the night before I was going to arrive the second day, I saw the tiki torches on CNN and that it was on CNN and it was a whole huge thing. And I'm like, oh crap, this is national news. Like, how quickly did you go from, hey, I'm dressing up, I dress up all the time, going to this protest, to now I'm on every channel and I'm the face of this story that is kind of feeding on its own momentum?
Well, by the time I had come out of the building, I had already gone viral on Twitter,
Okay.
and I was all over the internet. And then the
I did
next day,
endorse you for
my
president, by the way.
oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, dude,
Absolutely.
I'd certainly do a better job than Biden or half the candidates that are running. I promise you
Yes.
that. Um, but the Mockingbird media used my image the very next day, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even that night. And that image went all over. Every single media outlet around the world saw my face. And that happened very quickly. My social media was shut down. My YouTube, my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Facebook, all just wiped. The only thing that survived was Rumble and BitChute.
But Uber,
And
did Uber shut you down too?
what did?
Uber and Lyft, because Laura Loomer got her Uber and Lyft shut down. Did they
Oh,
go
I
after you or
didn't.
your bank?
I don't use Uber or Lyft. I didn't use either one of them. But I wouldn't be
What about your
surprised if I tried to get one. They
what
wouldn't
about
give me
your
one.
bank accounts? Because I know they recently got Nigel Farage for political reasons. Did your banks have any issues?
I didn't really have one.
Oh,
All I
okay.
had was like a green dot card.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, just walk me through. So that night you were becoming kind of this figure, mascot, I think is probably the correct word for this event. It's certainly, you're just one dude. It's out of your hands what's kind of being spun. Can you walk us through kind of what happened from there?
Well, I got on the road to go back home to Phoenix because we drove out there, and then I started my phone number had gone public,
Oh, you got
so I
doxxed.
get
Okay.
yeah. So the media was blowing my phone up, random strangers, weird voicemails, strange text messages from people I never knew or never met. Um, my mother and other family members are telling me, "Hey, the FBI is looking for you." And
Yeah.
so I thought, well, shit, I'll give them a call.
Yeah.
They want information on me. Why not just call them and be like, hey, what's up? So I called the FBI, um, conversed with
Wait,
the
hold on,
special
hold on,
agent.
hold on. I gotta ask. You call what their 1-800 number? How do you introduce yourself?
I think I said something like, hi, yeah, my name's Jake Angeli. I'm the guy with the horns and the face paint. What's up? I heard y'all were looking for me. I figured I'd call you.
And they knew who you were just from that, because that could just
Yeah,
mean
but
you're a
what was kind of
senator.
funny about it is that when I called him, I was like, I heard you guys were looking for me. Do you want to talk? You want information on me? I'll give you whatever you're looking for. And the funny thing is that they didn't. They're like, well, let me call you back because we have a special agent that's going to want to talk to you, blah 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 blah. We're not really the people that are supposed to take this information. We're just kind of getting the information from random people. And I was like, okay, well, call me back, man. And they didn't call me back for several hours, and I was kind of like suspicious of that. I was like, that's weird.
Well, were
I
you
would
scared?
think that they would want to call me back right away.
Were you freaking out? Were you scared?
No, not at the time, because I figured, I didn't riot. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't assault police officers. I didn't
Right.
vandalize any property. I didn't break into anything. You know what I mean? I just walked through open doors. I actually tried to help the police inside the building. So I thought, well, I think that at the time, it was publicly being stated that it was just for like misdemeanor charges. And even at the time, I understood there was a difference between misdemeanors and felonies.
Sure.
So I was like, well, misdemeanor charges, maybe spend, some little bit of time in jail, maybe some fines or probation. Okay, I can understand that, and so I that's why I called him. I was like, hey, I heard y'all want to talk to me, so let's talk.
Folks, cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. I'm not talking about some weird mind voodoo for my crazy neighbor. You know who it is. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, F-U-M, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? And Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air, and instead of harmful chemicals, they use all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. And your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting. So it gives your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. Stopping is something a lot of people put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason it can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code MALICE to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com. Use code MALICE to save 10% off your order today. You know Dave Smith and his very failed podcast and how he's always playing around with that device of his. Do you want to be like him? Of course not. It's a disaster. Tryfume.com, use promo code MALICE, and get control of your bad habit. Don't be like Dave. Folks, Michael Malice here, podcaster, author, and yes, underwear model. Sheath is something that I wear every day, and the great thing about Sheath underwear is that they have dual pouch technology for both parts of your anatomy. They also have a girls line. I don't wear that stuff. Dave Smith might. Go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code MALICE. You get 20% off. It's great underwear for when it's cold. It's great underwear for when it's hot. And I wear it every single day because it's the best underwear I've ever owned. The first time they brought into the studio, I was like, what is this? And now I swear by it. And in fact, I model for them. It's got added comfort, added performance, added mobility. And there's something a little subversive about talking to someone while the whole time your underwear is cupping your junk. I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy that aspect of it. And folks, they're not just an underwear line. Sheath now has bamboo hoodies and shirts, which are really, really soft. So go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code MALICE. You get 20% off your order. Support the underwear that supports you and that supports the show. So how did you end up getting arrested? Was it a traumatic experience or did you turn yourself in?
Well, no, yeah. So I knew that if I didn't, talk to them and turn myself in, that it was only a matter of time before I got the SWAT treatment.
Yes, there's no question. Yes.
So I figured, well, it's probably best to just face this. Face it like a man, confront the situation, take responsibility. So I set up a meeting with the FBI to converse here in Phoenix upon my arrival back to Phoenix on January 9th. And I even asked the FBI agent, I was like, hey, look, just be real with me. Are you guys going to arrest me? And he's like, oh, no, I don't see any reason to arrest you. We just want to talk to you. And naively, I believed him. He was an ex-Marine. He seemed like a nice guy, he was just trying to do his job. I had worked with law enforcement when I was working with kids in group homes. So I understood he had a job to do. And then the next morning, when that morning on January 9th, I went in for the interview and with the FBI, and as soon as I got into the interrogation room, they read me my Miranda rights, and I was like, oh
Okay.
fuck.
Were you actually surprised?
Kinda, not really. I figured, but at the same time, I wanted to believe that the system wasn't as that corrupt. I mean, I knew based on all this other string of evidence, yeah, they're probably going to arrest me. They're probably lying to me, but I wanted to believe that it wasn't going to turn out so bad.
Why would a system that's been run for decades by people who traffic in international pedophile rings not be corrupt?
Well, that's what I'm saying is that I figured I'm probably going to get arrested.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, I suppose it was a certain level of willful ignorance and naivety. It was naivety more than anything, more than willful ignorance. It was naivety of thing. But like in all honesty, even if I knew they were going to arrest me, which I figured they probably would, I would show up anyway
Sure.
because
Yeah.
that's what a man does.
Well, it's also the alternative is you getting kind of shot in your sleep.
And I knew that, and nobody deserves to have their home kicked, the door kicked in. My dog getting shot or something. And like I said, I think that real men confront controversy. They confront their mistakes, or they confront the fire that is in front of them. They walk through it. They don't run
How,
from it. That's what cowards
how
do.
difficult was it for you to get a lawyer, given your notoriety in a sense?
Well, my public defender here in Phoenix, when I was here in Phoenix, and they arraigned me and all that stuff, was just total garbage. As most public defenders are, not all. Some of them are good, but um, then I got a phone call, or I called my mom, and she said she got a phone call from Albert Watkins, the guy that represented those people in Minneapolis or whatever that came out of their homes with the firearms, and BLM and Antifa were talking
Yep.
about burning down their
The two
homes.
guns. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And he apparently represented them. And my mom's like, this guy represented these people. He's willing to, take your situation on pro bono. And so I
Wow.
got on the phone with him, on the lawyer phone, and he basically told me, "Oh, I'm a constitutionalist. I support Trump. What they're doing to you is atrocious, et cetera, et cetera. Your public defender did a really bad job. I'd like to represent you. Blah 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 blah." And being naive and not understanding the legal system and not being able to do any research on this guy,
Right.
I just kind of trusted what my mom was saying, and I trusted Al, and I was like, all right, yeah, sure. He'd been doing federal defense attorney law for like 30 something years. So I thought, well, that's a plus. Little did I know, apparently, what some people told me is he was donating to Democrat campaigns, that he was all over, liberal Democrat run media, CNN, MSNBC. Like he was always on those platforms. And so he was in one way or another kind of he liked the attention on him, in my opinion. And he really, in my opinion, did a terrible job of representing me.
What were you facing at that point?
Well, it started out with misdemeanors, and then they slapped me with the 2 felonies that in total had a maximum sentence of 25 years. And that'll wake you up in the morning, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
That really, like, oh my God. And I didn't understand, the legal system at the time, that I, likely wouldn't get 25 years unless, and I found out later, unless I went to trial. So, but it still freaked me out. I'm sitting in a cell in
Of
solitary
course.
confinement thinking, holy crap.
They put you in solitary?
Yeah. And they said it was for COVID. And then when I got shipped over to DC, once again, it was for COVID, 23-hour lockdown. And then I fasted for 11 days because the food wasn't organic. And then Judge Lamberth, God bless his heart, did the court order for an organic diet while I was being detained. And then so because the DC jail either couldn't or wouldn't provide me with an organic diet, they shipped me over to Alexandria, Virginia. And that was like a skip, a hop, and a jump away from DC. They housed federal inmates, especially high profile ones. And there is where I did my 10 and a half months of solitary confinement.
Do you agree with people, and this is my view as well, that solitary confinement is both a form of torture and unconstitutional?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think that solitary confinement is a form of soft torture because it's a form of soft torture because to the neural system in our brains, solitary confinement is akin to starvation and sleep deprivation.
Yes.
So, in that sense, yes, it is a form of torture.
And wait, I got to interrupt you because, again, I want to clarify people. There's no claim that you killed anyone, raped anyone, broke into someone's house. But my point is, you're being put in solitary. I can understand if someone's some violent murderer and they're like, look, we put him in Gen Pop, he's going to start killing people. This is an animal. There was no accusation at all that you were a violent. You've never. Have you ever been arrested for armed robbery or murder or anything like that?
Clean record.
Just want to be clear. So there's no possibility, there's no likelihood, or there's nothing to indicate that this person would be a violent threat to either the COs or other prisoners.
Right. And that's why, and they said it was for COVID. And then when that had pretty much run its course, I think they said that it was for my own protection because I was so high profile. Now, what doesn't make sense about that is that when they were transferring me from Alexandria to Oklahoma or to Colorado for my psychological evaluation and then back to Alexandria again, during all of those times I was in general population. So did COVID and my safety, all that stuff disappear?
But here's the other thing, Jake. If you don't have COVID, you can't spread COVID.
Well, I know, dude. I know.
I'm just saying, all it takes is testing another prisoner that you might like. Neither of you have COVID. Great. Lock them in a little cell together. They'll be friends, and problem solved.
Well, when I was in Colorado, I did have a cellmate, but he wasn't a very friendly person.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if they wanted to avoid the solitary and have some level of human decency, it's easy to resolve with just a simple COVID test, and now you could buddy up these two people and kind of isolate them together.
Solitary. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but solitary really made me much stronger mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It was a lot of pressure, but
did you have a television or anything?
Into a diamond? It didn't crush me. It turned me into a diamond.
Did you have a television? Like, what stimulation did you have for all that time?
Well, when I first got to Alexandria, I was put in a cell with no book because of COVID, with no real access to a television. I only got out every 48 hours for 45 minutes because of COVID. And I also was in a cell that didn't have radio reception. So they gave me a radio, but it wouldn't pick up any radio stations. So all I had was a pen and a pad of paper for the first 35 days.
How did you occupy yourself?
I wrote books. I wrote screenplays. I wrote poetry. I used my time as wisely as I could.
I mean, did you like exercise? I mean, I think that's supposed to be a good way to tire the brain.
Oh yeah. I did push-ups and stuff like that. Yoga, stuff like that. I meditated. But the thing is about meditation in solitary confinement, especially when you have this 25-year anvil hanging over your head by a string.
Yeah.
It's hard to get to a state of peace. It's hard to get outside of that melodrama. It's hard to get outside of yourself when every time you come back to your body, you realize, oh yeah, I'm in a cell that I can't get out of. And the government and the media are saying all this stuff about me. And they're talking about 25 years maximum sentence. And I don't know how long I'm going to be here, and, et cetera, et cetera.
The thing is, as I'm sure you appreciated at the time, you were so visually the symbol of that day that even though you never were even accused of putting your hands on a police officer or breaking down a door or anything like that, and other people did tussle with the cops, you still were in a very literal sense Exhibit A. So if they wanted to punish a political prisoner, you're the face, you know. And I'm sure you realize this, and I'm sure you heard this, your picture every single time they talked about it. You were front and center. Uh, so that how are you going to tell yourself, oh, it's, just be cool when the threat was extremely rational and real?
Precisely. And, I'm not too big of a fan of Andrew Tate for a number of reasons. But one of the things that he had right was when he was talking about when he was locked in solitary in Romania, and about how, like, when you have a negative thought in the regular world, all you got to do is watch TV or pull out your
Yeah.
phone,
Yeah.
and you can just get your mind off of it. But when you're stuck in a cell all day, and you don't have any sort of external stimulation to get your mind off of that bad thought, the bad thought keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. And in many ways, it becomes back more and more and more intense and more intensely each time. So it's a lot to deal with, especially when you are, like you said, they made me the face of this thing. They made me the poster boy. So even if I didn't assault a police officer, even if I didn't riot, even if I didn't destroy any property, even if I did try to help the police, they made me the face. So that all of a sudden is like guilty by association. Now we have to go after this guy because he's the face. We have to make an example of this guy because he was there and the media chose to make him the face.
How dark did it get? Did you ever have to deal with suicidal ideation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that if you tell the doctors that, or
Right.
if you tell anybody that, they lock you in a cell where you're observed all the time, and they give you like a suicide vest,
Yeah.
and you're almost basically like dang near naked. There's nothing in your cell. You don't get books. You don't get nothing. And you got somebody watching you shit all day. You got, watching somebody watching you 24/7. And the thing is I knew in reality, like, yeah, like, of course I had thoughts of it, but I also knew I didn't want to commit suicide. I didn't
Right.
want to die, but at the same time, I didn't want to live anymore. And that's a
Yeah, because
very strange place to be.
you were trapped, you were completely powerless. You were at the mercy of forces that you knew did
We're
not value
corrupt.
you. Were corrupt. I wouldn't say corrupt because corrupt implies redeemable. Were evil, had
Yeah,
no respect for human life, and would be more than happy to have you as a notch on the bed. That, like, we took this guy out, and now let's make an example of this guy for everybody else who wants to challenge us in whatever capacity. And you know how these people
precisely.
operate. So, at what point was it like, wait a minute, I might actually be a free man one day?
After I got my sentence,
So let's walk us through that. You're facing, like, can you walk us through that? Because I mean, until you're out, you're still gonna be like, okay, there's gonna be something else. They're gonna make something else up. Like, I'll believe it when I see it, I'm sure.
yeah. So when I was stuck in solitary, there was this idea, and this was what was so hard about it, of like not knowing what was going to happen. So it was like, are they going to sentence me to a long period? Are they going to let me go shortly? Are they going to be like, oh, well, you served your time in solitary, I'll give you a year in prison, get on out of here, you know? Um, and that's why, like, the plea deal that I signed, my lawyer was like, this is the best I can get for you. It turns out now the attorney I have now, who was once a prosecutor, Bill Shipley, January 6th defense fund, that guy, um, he basically said, Jake, I never would have had you sign this thing. This is like one of the worst plea deals I've ever seen,
Wow, okay.
but I didn't know. I had no
Right, of
idea,
course.
you know. I was just taking the legal advice of Al Watkins, and
Can you walk us
Shipley.
through what were the terms of that plea deal? That's public, correct?
Oh, can't appeal, being one of the big ones.
But I mean,
Um,
did you commit to lesser crimes? Like, what did you end up pleading to?
no, they had me commit to the highest crime.
Oh, crap. Okay. And what was this? Then
Yeah, yeah,
what was the sentence then?
obstruction of an official proceeding, and they also had enhancements on it that my defense attorney now was like, dude, I would have argued at the sentencing, or I would have argued before you even signed this, of like, well, this doesn't apply right here. This enhancement doesn't apply, but I didn't know any better.
Wait, so
So my attorney
when
said,
you're
this is the best deal you're going to get. it's better than 20 years in prison. Sign for 41 to 51 months. That's the guidelines for this. Sign for it. And I was like, this is the best I can get,
Okay, so you signed for, so you were like, all right, worst case scenario, I'm getting 51 months, but hey, that's forestalling 25 years. I can see why people would take that in a heartbeat. I mean, it would, especially knowing what you were facing and that they were making you the face of it. It's like you thought you were getting a good deal. So when did you actually, so what was the actual sentence?
41 months.
And you served all 41?
No. I served 27 of it in prison, 2 of it in like a week and a halfway house, and then the rest was on home confinement with like an ankle monitor. So a total of 29. But the thing is that I had 6 months off for good time, because in federal prison you only serve 85% of your sentence. So 85%, 15% of 41 months is 6 months. And then I also did programming while I was in prison. And because of the First Step Act, which Donald Trump signed into law in 2018, I think, because of the First Step Act, or FSA, I received 6 months worth of First Step Act credits that got me 6 months off my sentence. So I got a total of a year off my sentence because I didn't get in any trouble while I was in prison. Good time. And this, First Step Act thing. And then, so I got a year off of my sentence, and then I got released to halfway house. So what's interesting about it, though, is that, and this just goes to show how fast disinformation can spread. Okay. I got my sentence. I got my release date in mid-February of 2023. All right. I knew I was going to get out on March 28th in mid-February. And then a couple weeks later, Tucker Carlson airs that footage. Okay. And then a couple weeks after that, like 3 weeks after that, I get released. And there's all these people, oh, Tucker Carlson in the footage, it got him released. We won, we did it, and nothing could be further from the truth. But this shows how fast disinformation can spread, because then all of these people that are these talking heads on the networks or talking heads on the internet, or even like Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying that Tucker Carlson was a hero because I got released. And it's like, well, I mean, you're a congressman. You
Right.
should know better. All it takes is a call to the BOP,
So you're just to be clear, you're surprised that a congressperson is either lying or just not doing their homework at this, even after all this?
Well, I've been very impressed with some of the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has had the
Sure,
courage
okay,
to say.
that's fair.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of why I held her to a higher standard.
Okay.
And why I was slightly disappointed that she also believed this ridiculous notion. I mean, I understand the optics of it. I understand why it looked that way. But if you understand law, which anybody that's in Congress ought to understand law, then you have to know that, like, that footage, it would take months of litigation
But
for
where I'm
that
pushing
footage to
back,
get me released.
what I'm pushing back is I don't think that she's necessarily a dumb woman. She's certainly not as dumb as you would think watching
I don't
CNN.
think she's a dumb woman at
Well,
all.
hold on. My point being, I don't think she got it wrong. I think it's perfectly possible that she was simply lying to cozy up to Tucker and spread a good narrative.
Maybe,
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, calling out Eric Swalwell on the House floor for sleeping with a Chinese spy,
Epic.
thank you. Thank
No one's
you,
not arguing with you
pulling
there.
up the pictures of Hunter Biden and his
That's
sex tape
correct.
stuff during a hearing. Thank you. But the question we have to ask ourselves is this theatrics?
Right.
Is it political theater? Is it for clout? Why is she doing it? Because if
Right.
I'm not mistaken, she also backed this spending bill for the war in Ukraine recently.
Yeah, I mean, she's in Congress, and in her defense, that you're going to be somewhat limited because you got to fight the party. So who knows? There's a lot going on, but I do not give Congress people the benefit of the doubt, even if it's someone who sometimes does things that I happen to like. Folks, Jerome Powell and the Fed raised rates for the 11th time in July. The Hill has warned that it's a mistake that could spark a recession, and economists believe this is the last rate hike in the most aggressive rate hike cycle in history. And in fact, they're forecasting rate cuts in 2024. That's why bullish sentiment in gold for hedge funds just hit an 18-month high. And in fact, bullish sentiment for silver has risen at its fastest pace in more than 5 years. JP Morgan Chase sees gold prices at record highs in 12 to 18 months. Rate hikes are typically headwinds for gold. Meanwhile, gold has gone up over 20% since 2022. Imagine where gold and silver are going to be when the Fed stops raising and starts cutting. So call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late and mention my name, Michael Malice. You'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Here's what you have to do. Call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or simply go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 6 years in a row. So please call 888-505-9845 or just go to malicegold.com. Folks, did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? And if you wake up too hot or too cold, I recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. They're inspired by NASA. Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. These fabrics were inspired by NASA. They're thermoregulating. They're designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long. You get better sleep every night. And because they're infused with silver, that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. They stay cleaner, fresher, 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. And they're very comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog your pores, fewer breakouts, and other skin problems. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And if you're buying them for yourself as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use code MALICE at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save another 20%. Here's the kicker. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like it, you get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code MALICE. Get your 3-piece towel set for free and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk about your jail experience. What was, obviously, the loss of freedom, but what was the worst aspect of it for someone who's never been to jail? And also, what parts of it aren't as bad as people would think, never having been in jail?
Well, solitary confinement was the worst part of it.
Sure, of course, yes.
Not knowing what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, not being able to defend myself, trusting this lawyer that obviously did not do a good job at all to defend me. And that's my opinion. I think, I'm sure, has his own opinion, but anybody else that I've talked to on the outside that was experiencing all this stuff from the outside was like, dude, I was wondering why you stuck with that guy. And it's because I didn't fully know.
Yeah,
I was stuck in the cell,
You're in a sinking ship. You're going to grab any lifeboat. Yeah,
exactly.
Of course.
And anytime I tried to confront him about it, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I know what I'm doing, So that was really difficult. Now, here's something I will say about the treatment that I got. They could have fed me to the wolves if they wanted to. They could have put me in a communication management unit where there's no phone calls, no mail, 23-hour lockdown. They could have put me in general population in the DC jail. They could have put me in a prison, like a medium level facility if they wanted to, that was, and they could have rigged it to where I got my ass beat on a daily if they wanted to, which that's kind of concerning to think about, that they have that much power within their own system. But they didn't. They put me in Safford, Arizona, close to home so my family could visit. Safford, Arizona, from what the other prisoners who had been to other prisons, like they're taking a tour of the country, had told me, that Safford, Arizona was like, they called it Disneyland.
Okay.
I'm like, dude, you got to be kidding me. This sucks. But they said that the prisoners were saying the food wasn't bad. The programming that they had, for being an electrician, a plumber, HVAC, taking the GED course, They also had RDAP, which is Residential Drug Abuse Program, and that's what they had me take because it was mandatory, basically, because I told the pre-sentence investigator that I had eaten mushrooms, and apparently that was enough for the BOP to say you need to go to Residential Drug Abuse Program.
Go to rehab. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting, though, is that if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have gotten the 6 months off for good time, because that's what that programming is, what accumulated and got me that 6 months off. So, and I also looked at it as an opportunity to help drug addicts. Yeah. I looked at it, real drug addicts, I looked at it as an opportunity to have a positive influence on the yard and in the lives of inmates. And I also got to teach a metaphysics class while I was at Safford, Arizona. They also had a weight pile over there that I used every day, like 6 days a week. Got to take one day to rest. They had a softball field. They had compound movies. Sometimes new releases were on the compound that you could watch, and like the auditorium and stuff. So they could have made my life a lot more miserable than they did. So for that, I'm thankful. I tried to count my blessings.
What were some of the first things you did when you got that ankle monitor off?
Went for a hike.
Okay.
Went for a walk with my dog.
Oh, that must have been heaven. Yeah.
Oh, it was very nice. Driving around the city, going to the grocery store. You know what I mean? Like things that everybody takes for granted, man. Having cash in my pocket.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, have you ever had contact with, before or since, President Trump or any of his campaign surrogates?
No.
What is your take on Trump as the nominee for 2024? Is this something you support?
A lot better than DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy, or let alone Mike Pence or Chris Christie. Give me a break.
You're just saying that because your BMI is so good.
BMI?
Body mass index. That's this whole thing.
That's funny. You know what, man? I'll tell you right now. I love and support Trump. There's things that he's said and done that I do not agree with. But that's every single politician out there. And the fact that the deep state is still going after him really makes me go, they must really not like this guy. I wonder what the reason is for that, But at the same time, I'll also say there is so much that, as far as I can tell, no candidate that's running for president is saying that really needs to be said. Nobody's saying what needs to be said. Nobody is thinking centuries ahead. Am I the only one thinking centuries ahead? Am I the only one thinking about the children 7 generations away? Am I the only one that has a plan that is centuries ahead? Like, I'm just sitting here asking myself, why aren't they talking about the 3 patents that Donald Trump released and declassified in 2020? Why isn't Donald Trump talking about those 3 patents? You know the patents I'm talking about?
No. Do you mean with the COVID stuff?
No, dude, no. Something that will change the world forever. And that's why I don't understand why he's not talking about it. He released 3 patents in 2020. He declassified them. One is a 0-point energy engine.
Okay.
Infinite energy. Okay. Along with that infinite energy engine is a room temperature superconductor that allows this 0-point energy engine to function without overheating. Number 3 is a TR-3B. It's a triangular shaped vehicle that uses inertia propulsion or anti-gravity to move through space and time. All right. These 3 things are going to change everything if and when they go to the public. Now, if you want to look them up, all you have to do is look up Salvador Payas. He's the one that filed for the patents. Why it is that nobody's talking about this, I don't know. Why it is that nobody's talking about the 5,000 to 6,000 other disruptive patents that are classified by the government that our tax dollars paid for, I'm just clueless. I don't understand why people aren't talking about it. Like, what the hell? Like, our tax dollars paid for it. They've been classified, and they could literally change humanity and make our civilization so much more advanced. Why aren't the candidates running for president talking about that? Why aren't they talking about the fact that the FDA covered up cures for cancer for decades? Because they're in collusion with the pharmaceutical companies and the Rockefellers. Why?
Yeah, I talked about that actually with Vivek. Vivek's been on the show, and we talk. I have a friend who's a big biotech investor, and he discussed how there's lots of things on the market that would either cure or severely mitigate the effects of cancer, but the FDA just drags their feet because you have to have this long thing, and it's like, sure, it'll stop your cancer, but what are the long-term effects? I mean, this is the logic there, and it's like, even if that's true, let me make that decision as a person. Like, I'm facing the grave. Like, if I have to lose a foot, I don't care. I want to see my family, and I'll be hobbling around on one foot. They don't think
Well,
like that.
the thing is, the FDA is not concerned about people losing a foot. They're concerned
Right,
about
right,
the pharmaceutical companies losing
right.
profits.
Of course it is. Yes, yeah. How do people react when they realize who you are?
Well, a lot of the time, it's like positive shock, like, "Oh, you're that guy," you know. It's like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." The interviews that I've done or the spaces that I've gone in, people are really shocked because they're like, "Dude, I thought you were retarded." you know, like, like
Well, wait,
you know.
hold on. In their defense, you are back on Twitter, and everyone, all of us on Twitter, that word certainly applies. So there's some
Well,
reason.
yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
God love Elon Musk. He's another person that I have a lot of skepticism about because,
Okay.
like, there's all sorts of things like, oh, it's a free speech platform, but people are getting deplatformed left and right. Oh, it's a free speech platform, but guess what? Shadow banning is a real thing, and free speech does not equal equal reach.
Well,
I'm sorry,
I'm
what?
hold on a second. So I just got to tell you something. Elon follows me on Twitter, so he is going to be able to see this episode on his platform. So
Well,
so
then I
we,
have I have some questions for Mr. Elon. Why is it that you are like my largest supporter when I was in prison, but then I get out and there's no congratulations? There's no, hey, good for you, bud, and that's it. I mean, that would have been nice, but and then from what I've heard, Elon Musk even offered to pay my legal fees. There's been no outreach to my lawyer, and
hold
so
on.
like I
I don't know
wonder.
Elon. I don't know Elon, but I will say I've been following this situation fairly closely. I didn't know you were out until I saw you replying to someone on Twitter, and even then I didn't wasn't sure it was really you until I watched some video. So it was not, in my opinion, or at least my understanding, anywhere near as public knowledge that you were out as it was that when you were locked up.
Well, and I've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a busy man. He's a billionaire, for God's sake. How many companies does he have? You know what I
Right.
mean? So
I'm
like
not
I
defending
get
him,
it.
just saying that's a
No, no, no. I
possibility.
know. I get it. And I've given, but the thing is, I've replied to his tweets.
Okay.
I've tagged him and stuff. Even the freaking New York Post said used his name in a headline. The fact that I was disappointed. The fact that he never reached out. So I mean, and this is the other thing. I know Elon Musk is a smart mofo. Are you
Oh yeah.
telling me this smart mofo he owns this platform, and the guy that he's supporting is now out and on his platform, and he doesn't know about it?
I think that's possible, yeah.
Maybe it's possible.
I'm
I
just
don't.
saying it's
Like I said,
possible.
I like
I'm
giving people the benefit of the doubt. Okay, and I would. The thing is, I'd love to talk with the guy. He named his corporation Tesla, and I am one of the biggest proponents and advocates for Tesla Tower technology and infinite free, clean, wireless electricity to the people. So if he knows about Tesla, I'm wondering, like, hey, bro, what's up with the Tesla? What's up with Nikola? What you think of that, bro? You know what I mean? Like the implications for humanity are astounding.
So what I think you should do is clip this little segment we just did from this episode and tweet it, and then I'll retweet it. So he'll be able to give it greater visibility. I'm happy to do that. I don't again, I don't know him, so it could be he doesn't want to have anything to do with you, which is certainly, I'm sure, happened to a lot of people, or it could be he doesn't know, or it could be somewhere in between. Maybe he's being told not to talk to you. I don't know. I
That's what I
certainly
thought. That's what
I
I figured.
there's no doubt in my mind, and again, I don't have not heard this from him or anyone around him, that there must be a lot of deep state pressure on anyone who runs a social media network. He's got kids. I wouldn't put anything past any of these people.
Oh, and that's the thing. I understand, and that's why I don't have anything personal against the guy. I don't hold it against him. I understand completely, but to me, it's like, man, Come on, like you're advocating for my release, and I'm released, and you know you're not saying anything, man. You're not even a congratulations or a wave. You know, I would love to do a spaces with the guy. That would be really cool. You know, I'd love to talk to him about a couple of things. You know, the energy. I'd love to talk to him about communications. I'd love to talk to him about things like Starlink and things of that nature. I'd really like to pick his brain on Neuralink and why he thinks that putting computer chips in people's brains is a good idea. Uh, but my thinking is that if he's intelligent, as I know that he is, then these are questions he should have no problem answering, especially on a public forum like Spaces.
If I may make a suggestion for you, I would recommend that you join Cameo. Are you familiar with Cameo?
No.
So Cameo is a website for celebrities where like I'll pay some athlete, reality star, politician, like $100, 500,000. You set the rate, and then I get to get you like, hey, it's Jake. Happy birthday, Angela. Just want and you make a little video message for people, and you get bank. And I think you're in a unique position to charge like $250 for a minute's work, and you might actually make some decent money from this because it'd be a really cool thing to be like, hey, here's the QAnon shaman, air quotes, wishing you a happy birthday or whatever. I'm sure would please a lot of MAGA people to be able to get messages from you, and it would be something that you could make money, and you wouldn't have to kind of do anything you wouldn't want to. It would be a nice way.
Well,
So just check that out.
It's a great idea. The funny thing is, bro, as a shamanic practitioner, I'm not concerned about making money. I'm concerned about making a difference, making a
Sure,
positive
but it could be
difference.
both. It could be giving
And
people.
that's the way I was just looking at
Yeah.
it. It could be both. You know, it could make a positive impact in people's lives. And why not? I'll write it down. Cameo.
Cameo.com. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be just free money. They asked me to do it, but I don't like acknowledging the public. Jake,
Yeah, well, and that was the other thing I was thinking about was like, what if they have me like give a Cameo shout out to some like perverted pedophile or something? I don't want to do that.
Well, you'd have to.
I don't
mean,
like pedophiles, bro. I don't hate anybody, but I don't like people that harm children.
I think you're I very much in agreement with you on that one. By the way, as of recording, it is my nephew's 6th birthday, so these kind of
Oh,
issues
what's
hit.
his name? I'll give him a shout out for free.
It's things get Lucas is his name, but it gets a lot different when you have kids in your life. When it's just something theoretical, it gets even it gets amped up.
Oh yeah.
And I'm only an uncle, not
The
a dad.
desire to protect children becomes
Yes.
very intense at that point. So happy
Jake,
birthday, Lucas.
Jake, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Well, in all honesty, the questions that you're asking are a little different. And, talking about like the DMT elves or psilocybin and the effects of these shamanic plants on society and the psyche, that's my avenue of expertise. I use these things, or should I say I've used them. I'm on, supervised release. I can't use them now, but in the past I used them, and it changed my life for the better considerably. I too was at one point depressed. I too at one point had anxiety, and if it wasn't for the mushroom, I don't know where I would be.
You are welcome.
Have you ever heard that story that Napoleon used the Egyptian Sphinx for target practice and shot its nose off? Or maybe you've heard that a French astrologer named Nostradamus correctly predicted nearly 500 years of human history. Or maybe someone told you that the legendary blues guitarist Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads in Mississippi. These stories are what I like to call historical myths. Great little tales that may or may not have any basis in historical fact. On Our Fake History, we explore these historical myths and try to determine what's fact, what's fiction, and what is such a good story it simply must be told. If you dig stories about death-obsessed emperors, lost civilizations, desperate sieges, voodoo black magic, and famous historical figures you thought you knew, then Our Fake History might just be your new favorite podcast. If you dig it, then subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.